Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. What do we got today, Rick?
We got our Week 10 trade targets.
Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
Cruising right through the fantasy football season. Our Week 10 trade targets. In some leagues, this is it. This is the last week that you can make any form of extracurricular trade activities with other league mates. So, yeah, it's crunch time. It's crunch time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, 100% crunch time. This is where you win and lose.
Yeah, for us, we try to make it more interesting for our trade deadline so everyone knows exactly when it hits.
Mm-hmm.
So then people are scrambling to make trades before the deadline. Makes it way more fun.
It does. Like trade deadline.
In most leagues, right, that I'm in, like there's not like a specific time.
Mm-hmm.
So I usually set it and then turn trades off, essentially. But anyway, it makes it way more interesting for the league to completely explode when way too many trades happen.
Yeah.
But anyway, if your trade deadline is this week, buying the players that you need to buy, finding good, like, I guess my tip would be finding really, really good schedules, rest of season, is super important. If your trade deadline's week 12, obviously, we got you covered until then. We'll probably take this up until week 13 and then stop once the playoffs start. I don't know what we're going to do.
That sounds about right. We'll figure something else. Probably replace it with like some sort of playoff show, I guess.
Yeah. Interesting. So before we jump into our trade targets, check out our website, thefantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter at the FFChamps, on Instagram at the Fantasy Champions. You can like us at facebook.com/thefantasychampions. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platform, be sure to subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, smash it, crush it, destroy it with the mouse or finger that you have.
Just hit subscribe. We know you
so
watch.
Easy. Leave a review and share this podcast with your friends. If you're watching on YouTube, you can also subscribe there, click the bell for notifications, and then leave a comment down below. But remember, by the end of the season, if we reach 1,000, Rick's hair gets cut off. All of it. So I would go straight bald. I got a buzzer for that.
Should I? You know, it'd be great.
What's that?
Probably would be really hard to do. But you know how when you buzz your hair and you can put something in the buzz cut?
Oh, like a decal?
Yeah.
Well, I'll shave your head, and then we'll take you to a barber and get the worst team in the NFL's logo shaved in the side of your head.
Like Jacksonville or something. The Jets. Oh,
the Jets. You get a little jet on your freaking side of your head.
Oh, man, that would be awful.
Oh,
I'd have to wear hats for like 2 straight months.
Yeah, that's so funny. So let's jump right into, like I said, if you have a comment, any questions, trade target questions, leave it down below. So let's talk about our trade targets. We're going to start with the sells, move into the buys. We do have, I feel like some of these sells are repeated, but we haven't talked about any of them. We try to come up with new ones every week, but I think in the next couple weeks we might recycle.
Yes, probably. It's because it's been like 10 weeks.
So let's start with the first one. And this one is a little bit more difficult for me because I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure I want to do it yet, but it's a wise fantasy decision. But then if he goes off, I look like an idiot. So yeah. It's one or the other, but it's Josh Allen. And the reason why I find this tough is that a couple weeks ago when he was doing that 18, 16, and 13 and having bad games, I was kind of thinking like, okay, you know what? For Josh Allen, it's not, once he has this really good game against Seattle, which was a projection for me, it was going to be sell, and then his schedule went from looking like it was really hard to looking like it was a little bit easier.
Yep.
And I noticed that Josh Allen it's not really matchup related with him. it's more related to the fact that if the team they're playing doesn't score, there's no reason for the Bills to like try to go hard all on offense with Josh Allen. It's not necessary. Now the Jets game is a different situation, but the 3 games that he didn't do great against, he had Kansas City, and Buffalo held Kansas City down for a good part of that game. So it wasn't like it was like a total shootout there, be it at 18 points. Against the Jets, they didn't even need to score any touchdowns to beat them by 14. It was just all field goals. But he didn't score any touchdowns in that game. Had he scored a touchdown, it would be a completely different conversation. And against New England, I mean, New England's defense, we know how they are against quarterbacks. But Seattle, they score a lot of points. The Bills scored a lot of points. Arizona, you're going to see that same situation. They score a lot of points. Chargers, for the most part, Justin Herbert has gotten that team to score a lot of points. San Francisco, that is going to be a game that's a little bit questionable for Josh Allen. So, and then as you go through, like Pittsburgh, he's going to have to be good. You know what I mean? In order to have a really good game. And then Denver, obviously, I think he'll have a good game there. So it's like he does have a decent schedule. But yeah, week 16 against the Pats, not a good matchup. 2 out of 3 of his playoff matchups are not good. Right. And if Denver doesn't score any points, then the Bills are just not going to do extremely well against the Denver Broncos either. So for me, when I look at Josh Allen, this is the reason why I would trade him, is because I don't know that he is going to be an extremely good quarterback rest of the season. I think he's going to be good, 20 points a game, but I don't think he's going to be the 30-point-a-game quarterback that you got earlier in the season. I just don't think that's going to be the case. And you can sell him on he just had a 39-point game, or 30, 34, 35-point game and say he's back, he's going to be really good, and try to go out and get a quarterback that makes sense for your team rest of the season depending on schedule. I don't like to overthink things and overplay things. But with Josh Allen, it is getting more concerning. Plus, he has that bye week. So if you can sell all of that and get a guy that makes more sense for your fantasy team, I would do it.
Yeah, I mean, Allen's not bad. I think he's somebody that you can also keep and be fine. I just think he's so inconsistent. And, like, if I own Josh Allen in a redraft league, I'd just be so nervous going into the playoffs. Yeah. And going into the end of the season because he's so up and down. Now, he was our start of the week this week, but it was against Seattle, so I think ranked like 31st against quarterbacks, something like that, in the bottom 3 or 4. So against a great matchup like that, he did fantastic, but then against a great matchup like the Jets earlier in the year, he didn't. So like you said, it's not all entirely on matchup. It's more just how the other team plays against the Bills and how much they have to throw the football. Again, I don't think Allen's going to be too bad, but you can definitely sell him at a high point right now, coming off that 39-point week. He's the QB4 right now, I believe. Yeah. In fantasy, which is pretty good. So you can sell him to a team that's kind of been struggling with quarterbacks. Maybe somebody who just had Tom Brady score 4 points.
Yeah.
In their home league.
You want him?
No. But yeah, so if you could sell Josh Allen, I think you should.
Yeah, totally agree. And it's not like we think Josh Allen's going to suck. Like, I still think he's going to get 20 to 25 points per game. He's going to have really good weeks.
25, 30, and then he's going to have another dud where he gets like 10 points.
I feel like the hard part for me with Josh Allen is that by the time you reach week 16, you definitely are not going to want to start him against New England. Nope. Like, there's no reason to take that risk. Not going to want to start
him week 14 either against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and like Pittsburgh might even be a little bit like more suspect. Like, he might be able to score more fantasy points on them, but against New England, he had scored 13 points last time he played New England, and every time he plays New England, he just gets destroyed. So I don't know that it's going to be a really good situation for Josh Allen to run up against New England and get 12 fantasy points in your championship week. So that's why I think it's crucial for you to try to at least sell him now, because otherwise you're going to have to pick up a streaming option for multiple playoff weeks. And it's like, if that's the case, then why even bother? You know what I mean? Like, you use them for what you can and then sell them. You know, if your trade deadline is week 12, try to get yourself through week 12 and trade them away. That's probably the better strategy. But anyway, number 2 on this list, DJ Chark. Tell us about DJ Chark, Rick.
DJ Chark, he's coming off a great week, and a lot of owners are excited. But with Chark, there's just question marks with DJ Chark. his schedule rest of the season is actually very good. Next few weeks.
Selling point.
There's a lot of green matchups. But then his week 15 and 16 are Baltimore and Chicago, which absolutely blows. But leading up to the playoffs,
especially with no quarterback
games.
If I don't know if Gardner Minshew's going to play or not, but
so that's another thing. Who's going to be his quarterback? Is it going to be Jake Luton?
Yeah, who
played decent against Houston, but how is he going to play against Green Bay or Pittsburgh or even Cleveland? Like those tougher matchups for him. And then if they go back to Minshew, we know all season Chark has been wildly inconsistent with Minshew, and it's not Chark's fault. But it's just been the case. He had a game where he had 7 targets and only had 1 catch.
Right.
He had another game where he had 14 targets and had 7 catches with Minshew as quarterback. So, I mean, it was a little bit better this week, 12 targets, 7 catches, but it's still a lot of uncatchable balls for DJ Chark. And he's going to be a boomer bust guy all season, no matter who his quarterback is, which is fine because he has the capability of getting a 24-point week, a 25-point week. But he also has the capability of you put him in your starting lineup against 3 fantasy points.
I think too the biggest problem is that you don't know when those weeks are coming.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you can find like a player who's really great, you know, at home as opposed to on the road, or really great against a good matchup. But for DJ Chark, it doesn't look like he is one of those players that you look at and go, okay, this is a guy I definitely can start this week. It's almost like all right, I'm just going to start him in my flex every week and hope to God that he actually plays good.
Right. Yeah. And it's not entirely on matchup because, I mean, he had a great week against Houston this week at 24. But the first time they played Houston, he had 3 fantasy points.
Yeah. Yep.
It's more of his Jacksonville in the game because they've been blown out a lot this season.
Right.
Usually if they're in the game and throwing a lot, then he's obviously going to get looks. It's pretty simple. But against teams like Pittsburgh, like they might get blown out too hard. Against Green Bay, same thing. And Green Bay has a good shutdown corner as well. Cleveland, I'm not so sure. And then Baltimore and Chicago, I'm not confident in. So there's just a lot of games in the schedule that I'm just not confident in with DJ Chark.
Okay. I think for me, it's like you said, the inconsistency, and it's also like I think this is the highest that you're going to be able to sell him because he is coming off that game. I saw people talk about how he was non-quarterback dependent. It doesn't matter what quarterback is throwing him the football, he's going to be good. And that may be right. It also may be wrong. I think it varies. Do I think he's going to have continued success with Jake Luton or Luton at quarterback? Like, no. I think he had a good game this week, but I don't think that's going to continue into the future. So it's like, it's not a situation that I'm sitting here like going, oh my God, you know, I definitely think DJ Chark is going to be a really good wide receiver the rest of the season. I mean, now he does have an okay schedule outside of the last 2 weeks of the season. So, you know, obviously that's going to be something that is a little more heavy on your mind when you're thinking about trading him. But I think it's worth selling if you can get something out of him. It's not going to be like a lot considering that he hasn't really had great games this year, but it's at least
some name recognition though. And he has had 2 good games, 2 really good games.
Right. So you can definitely, he's sellable, definitely sellable. The final guy in number 3 in the sells list is Christian Kirk. Now, I saw Kirk earlier today, and I didn't even think about putting him on the sell list. And I think he could go either way with Christian Kirk, to be honest with you. Sure. It took him a little while to find a role in this offense, and Hopkins had been just dominating the target share. Mm-hmm. And now it looks to be Christian Kirk on a week-to-week basis. But since week 5, actually, I should do the numbers from week 5 to week 9. And see where he lands. But he had 10, 21, 18, and 20. Yeah. Hold on a second. I'm just going to do that anyway. And half PPR, weeks 5 through 9, Christian Kirk is the wide receiver 7 in 4 games. So he's been playing really well. He's been all over inside. You know, the biggest thing is you have to look inside the numbers. And I think for me, when you look at 58, snap percentage, 81, 79, 63 in the last 3 weeks in terms of his snap percentage. That's like all over the road. Target share 7, 3, 8, 8. That's also all over the road. And the only reason why he had his 21 and 18 point weeks is because he caught 2 touchdowns. Now, does that mean there's a trend coming where he is going to be catching a lot of touchdowns in the red area? I don't know. But I do think that I'm not sure that this trend can continue. And I think, you saw him against Miami, Seattle, Dallas, and the Jets. I mean, those matchups are very easy for wide receivers. Yes. And he has Buffalo, New England, Los Angeles, Philly at the end of the season here. And he has maybe 2 games left that are easy. So and that's against Seattle and against the Giants. So I would jump on Christian Kirk and getting rid of him at this point, because I don't think it's worth having him on your team to just, like, if you hold on to him and expect him to be really good rest of season, he could revert back to that not great performance that he was putting on earlier in the season. You know what I mean?
And with Kirk, it's like, you can look at the numbers and say, is it a trend that he's getting 8 targets a game now last 2 weeks? And that's very well possible. But if you look at DeAndre Hopkins this past week, he was kind of shut down by their top corner. Is it Xavier Rhodes, or is he their second corner?
I don't know.
They have 2 very good corners, and
one of them was
on Hopkins all game and kind of shadowing him. Hopkins had 3 targets this week, and that's partly why Christian Kirk had 8 targets. And then the week before against Seattle, he had a lot of targets, but so did everybody, because that game went to overtime and there was just a lot of pass attempts in that game. So those 2 to me are not consistent. I mean, if it happens again this week against Buffalo, then you're looking at a trend. But I think both those games, there's valid excuses of why he had that many targets. I think he probably could go back down to like 5 or 4 targets this upcoming week against Buffalo, and it could kind of all revert down. Now, I could be wrong, because he has played very well in the opportunities that he's gotten, and he has big play capabilities. I think he's had 2 or 3, like the game against Dallas and this week against Miami, he had big touchdown plays for like 20, 30, 40 yards, like big plays down the field.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they could keep using him like that, and if it keeps working, it's going to keep working, right? But it's just a matter of the matchups for me, and then a matter of, is he going to keep that target share?
Yeah. I think the trend, hopefully the target share stays the same, but I think the trend shows you that it's just not. And I think this is a hot streak for Christian Kirk. I mean, Arizona's playing ridiculous, and they're throwing the football a lot more than they did last year. So the target share might actually be there for Christian Kirk, but I just don't trust it. You know what I mean? Like, over the last 3 weeks, he's caught 5 touchdowns. I don't see that trend continuing. I really don't. So I would sell him now while you can, at a high value. But those are our sells. Let's jump into our buys. Jonathan Taylor, man, he is a conundrum, and I think it's consistent among a lot of fantasy analysts that Jonathan Taylor be a buy, more specifically because the value that was invested to get Jonathan Taylor was what, a 4th round pick, maybe 5th.
It's about even a 3rd, depending on the
even a 3rd, depending on the league. Yeah. But you also have a situation where, Marlon Mack gets hurt. And so now all of a sudden, Jonathan Taylor has been a top 12 running back ranked on Fantasy Pros ECR for a majority of the season. And people have been excited. They've been like, oh my God, Jonathan Taylor is so good. And they've continued that excitement. And week after week, I just start questioning, why are we still excited about this guy? You know what I mean? And it's like, I understand the excitement, but like I said, there's a conundrum, because I love Jonathan Taylor and I think he's talented, but he just has not, it's looking like he's losing his friggin' job to Jordan Wilkins and Naeem Hines the last couple of weeks. And as a Jonathan Taylor owner, I've kind of looked at him and been like, oh my gosh. Yep. I don't like having this guy on my team. I sold him. I did. I sold him before the game on Sunday, after his 4-point game against Detroit, because I was done. Like when Marlon Mack got hurt and he took over, I was expecting the 18 points a game that he had against Minnesota. I was expecting that on a week-to-week basis. And after that, he didn't reach over 60% snap percentage in any of the games that he has played after week 2. And over that time, he's had 12, 8, 14, 13, 4, and 8. He looks like David Montgomery last year. And it's not great. And he's still the RB19, so he's still a low-end RB2. He's still a flexible option. But it scares me a little bit the way they've been utilizing him and the way they put him in the offense. Now, his schedule rest of season is very easy. He has Houston, Las Vegas, Houston, weeks 13, 14, and 15, and then Pittsburgh in week 16. So the week 16 matchup is concerning, but the early playoff schedule is really intriguing for Jonathan Taylor. Now, the reason why he is on the buys list, because I just gave you a lot of reasons why you shouldn't buy him, is because he is young, talented, and I don't think that the Indianapolis Colts can hold him down for much longer. So he had like the play he fumbled on. He ran 3 people over and got like 8 yards, 9 yards, almost got the first down, and he just fumbled it. And then they didn't play him the rest of the game. And it's like he's on such a short leash right now. It's like, Frank, just put him in the game. Let him play. Let him get consistent. Yeah. I told this to Rick many times before our podcast. Like, Jonathan Taylor is a running back that needs to get into a rhythm. That's his style. And if you give him 12 carries a game, he's not getting into a rhythm. That's for sure.
Right. He's a similar like a Dalvin Cook or Nick Chubb.
Yeah, right.
The more carries they get, the better they are. And it's funny because I was watching that game and I was thinking to myself, like, man, the Colts would be doing much better on offense because they were blue on offense.
Yeah.
And this was after they benched Jonathan Taylor. And I was like, they'd be doing a lot better right now if they, had a running back that could get them like 5-8 yards a carry. Oh, they do, but he's on the bench.
He's sitting on the bench.
Wasn't that good. But yeah, I 100% would put Taylor as a buy for most of the stuff you said, especially in the beginning where you were dissing on him, because fantasy owners, including yourself, that own Jonathan Taylor, especially in normal leagues where they might not follow college football, and they just was like, let me take a flyer on this rookie running back. He hasn't been nearly as good as the expectations are in the last 2 weeks, especially. He has not been good. And people can look at the snap percentage and see the 32% snap percentage, 33%, and just be like, well, he's losing his job. I don't want him at all. Like, I'm just going to sell him. And you can probably get him, depending on your league and depending on who owns him. There's a very real possibility you can get him at a very cheap price right now. And you have to take advantage of that because he could stay like this rest of the season. And if he does, you're probably not going to give up anything crazy that you're going to regret for his price currently. But if you do make the trade and he ends up turning it around because of the schedule, it could be a league winner because the schedule, as you said, is very easy. He's got Tennessee twice, which now Tennessee's got an average run defense. So I'm not too concerned about that. But then he's got Green Bay and the Raiders, who have struggled against running backs all season. And he's got Houston twice, which is a gold mine for running backs. And I think those 2 weeks could be huge weeks. And those are week 13, week 15. So it's a playoff game as well. They only want to get, like you said, Pittsburgh in week 16. That can be tough. But by then you'll know if he's worth starting every week or not. At the end of the season, at least, it might change. And I do think he's not going to have I don't think next week he's going to fumble in the first quarter and then get benched again. I mean, that could happen, but the chances of that happening to me are pretty low because before that happened, he was getting most of the work. He was getting almost 90% of the snap share in the first quarter.
He also was he had 6 rushes, 27. I was getting nervous because I had traded him and I'm like, oh, frick, here we go.
Yeah, he did pretty much all. I think he had 1 carry. I think he had 5 carries in the first quarter, and then they gave him one carry in
rest of the game,
in the fourth quarter.
And he had 4.5 yards a carry on that. And I think the funny thing is that when you watch Jonathan Taylor throughout the season, the biggest problem for him has been, I think it's been his vision, because his athleticism and his ability just to run people over is prevalent. And it's clear that he's good in that regard. His physical attributes and his intangibles are fantastic, but his problem is that he's lacking the vision right now to get past the offensive line. With that being said, he's averaging about 4.5 yards a carry in games that he plays well. So it's there was only a couple of games this year where he had under 4 yards a carry, and I don't even know if I want to consider the Minnesota game in that conversation because he had 3.9, so he's basically at 4. And it's so he had 2 games this year where he had under 4 yards a carry, and it was against Jacksonville and against Detroit. And so I think the biggest thing for Jonathan Taylor is yes, like you said, the schedule. And I think it's the fact that he might be a league winner overall. So I would definitely go out and buy him. He is super cheap. The reason why I came in with the bad cop and Rick came in with the good cop is because Jonathan Taylor, I am the person that has watched him for
Yes.
Was it 8 weeks now?
And stuck with him.
Yeah, stuck with him. And I was thinking about it earlier today. I'm like, Jonathan Taylor, last point on Jonathan Taylor, but Jonathan Taylor is this player that is not bad enough to bench, but he's not good enough to start. And he's like hovering in this range of like, I have to play him. Like, there's no way I don't play Jonathan Taylor because he's the starting running back for the Colts. And if he plays the whole game and gets 20 carries, he's going to be really good. But it's like, if I bench him, I look like an idiot. And if I start him and he gets 5 points, I look like an idiot. So it's like, either way, you're in a conundrum with Jonathan Taylor. If you can get him and hold him on your bench justifiably without having to, give up too much, I would definitely do that. But if you're picking him up to make him like a feature running back on your team, I don't know what the expectation is going to be for you. You're probably not even in the playoffs anyway at that point. Rick, tell us why Adam Thielen is our next buy.
Adam Thielen. I actually love Adam Thielen going forward. And the reason is the last 2 weeks he has really struggled. He has 4 fantasy points and 4 fantasy points on 4 and 5 targets. Now the owner might look at that and be like, like he's getting old, all this stuff. It's literally just game script. I mean, in the week before, so 2 weeks ago in week 8 against Green Bay, they won the game. Kirk Cousins had 14 pass attempts. 14. He had 11 completions.
Just like last year.
Adam Thielen.
Just like last year.
Last week against the Lions, they were in control for the whole game, had the lead. Kirk Cousins threw the ball 20 times and had 13 completions, and 2 of them went to Adam Thielen. So going forward, we look at it. He's playing Chicago, probably going to have to be forced to throw the ball in that game. Dallas is a game where they might control, but Dallas has been so bad in the secondary that in the little limited opportunity that Thielen gets, he could still play really well. Carolina's going to be a close game. Jacksonville's been awful in the secondary. It's probably going to be the same thing at Dallas.
Yeah.
And he's got Tampa Bay, who's given up a good amount of points to receivers. Chicago, that's going to be a close game. They're going to be forced to throw the ball more. And then the Saints have struggled with receivers, and that will also probably be a game that they're going to be behind in or close where they're going to be forced to throw the ball. So pretty much every game rest of the season, except maybe Jacksonville and Dallas, they're going to be forced to throw the ball in all likelihood. And when they're forced to throw the ball, Adam Thielen has been a top 3 fantasy wide receiver. He had 28 against Green Bay, 10 against Tennessee, 22 against Houston, 24 against Seattle, 12 against Atlanta. Like, he's been good all season except that one game against the Colts, but he still had 8 targets. He had 4 fantasy points in week 2 against the Colts, but he had 8 targets still in that game. So he still was targeted. And in any game they're forced to throw the ball, he gets like 8 to 13 targets. Like, he gets targeted. That's literally the only thing with the Vikings. It's very frustrating if you own any Vikings receivers or you start Kirk Cousins because you just don't know week to week how much they're going to throw the ball.
Yeah.
But if they throw the ball a lot, they produce fantasy numbers. And the rest of the season, it looks like that's going to be the case with them.
Yeah, I don't disagree with anything you said. Let's quickly talk about Clyde and then conclude the show because I have like maybe a minute.
We got a minute to talk about Clyde Edwards-Hilaire, baby.
Yeah. Hold on. Well, all right, go ahead. Speak.
Why? Why? I
was going to start Clyde, but you just jumped in, so you might as well just finish.
Okay, yeah. Clyde, he hasn't been getting used at all really since they signed Le'Veon Bell. 8 carries, 6 carries, 5 carries. It's very gross. But again, game script too. It's the way he's outperformed Bell.
Right.
Bell is averaging about 1 yard a carry, a little more than 1 yard a carry since signing with the Chiefs. He's been not good. Clyde's a better guy. And they have easy games rest of the season pretty much. The Raiders, Tampa, who struggled against running backs, Miami, and then he's got Atlanta in week 16. He has Denver and the Saints, which will be tough, but he hopefully his involvement in the passing game will get his floor numbers up. So even in those games, if he struggles, he hopefully will get like 9-10 points just because of his receiving work. So it's a good time to buy him. I think he's very cheap right now considering the Le'Veon Bell stuff, but I think he still can get like 10, 15 points a week rest of the season going forward.
So I do have a question though. He is getting a lot of pass catching work, which is good for him, but he's not been rushing it at all. Do you think there's going to be an increase in rushing share? Because I really don't.
I think he can get a little bit more carries depending on game script, and I think they're going to start using Bell less and less just because he's not been good.
I mean, they didn't use him at all last week, really.
Like this week, it was a very close game. Mahomes threw the ball 45 times. They only ran the ball, 9, 10, 12 times in the game. So in games where the Chiefs are going to run the ball more like 18, 20 times, Clyde might get more carries because he still had more carries than Bell, only by 1, in 5 to Bell's 4. So
right.
I think with the rest of the season going forward, they like Clyde more than Bell. He's going to get a little bit more carries, and then the game script. So if they are forced to run the ball or not forced, but if they choose to run the ball about like 18, 20 times, I think Clyde can get like 13, 14 carries, and then Bell gets like something like 6.
It's weird because the last couple weeks have been like a change in the trends for Clyde Edwards-Hilaire. Or for the Chiefs in general, I should say, because they've against Denver and the Jets and the Carolina Panthers, they haven't been running it a lot. They've been back to what they were like in, like early in the season, the first 6 games of the season, they were running the football like 20 times a game, and they were playing that style of offense like they did last year when they won the Super Bowl. The last 3 weeks, it looks like they've reclined to the 2018 Chiefs, where they just threw the ball 40 times a game. And it's like, they're not using Clyde even on the ground.
Great from Mahomes and Tyreek and Travis Kelce. Right.
But not for Le'Veon Bell and Clyde Edwards-Hilaire. So the problem that I have with Clyde is that if they don't, like if there's 25 rushes to give out to the running back position for the Chiefs every single game, then Clyde's going to get 14 to 15 carries. He's going to get 3 to 4 catches. He's going to get enough opportunity in that offense to get himself, enough opportunities to score a ton of fantasy points. His problem is that they've been running it like 15 times a game, and 5 are going to Bell and 8 or 9 are going to Clyde.
Yeah.
And so it's like if that snap percentage doesn't hold at like 55 to 60% and he doesn't get 12 to 15 carries a game, then it's going to be hard for Clyde to have success. Now that's devil's advocate. I think he's cheap right now.
Right.
Very cheap. And I think you could probably get him on the sly. And then if, coming out of the bye week, they choose.
I think.
Say it again.
It's similar to Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, definitely. But I think coming out of the bye week, if they choose to just run with Clyde full time rest of the season, then obviously that becomes a much better situation for you and your fantasy team. But like I said, I'm not disagreeing with buy on Clyde. The expectation should be tempered in terms of excitement, because he might as well come in and he might very well come in and be just this like elite, crazy good running back. But then there's also a chance that he just sucks.
I think the most likely scenario and what I expect is that he's going to, fantasy point wise, is not going to change from pretty much the rest of the season. I think he's going to stay at around 10 to 15. It might be less work, but more efficient just because of matchup or whatever it is. But I think you can buy him at a cheap price right now because owners are scared of Bell. They're scared of that snap percentage, and they're scared of the carry numbers per game. Okay,
that'll do it for our trade targets for Week 10. If this is it, and this is the last of the trades that you can make, thank you for listening to our Trade Target show all season long. We love you. If you are listening until Week 12 or Week 13, then that's great, and we'll welcome you. Waiver starting sits tomorrow. We'll talk to you Thursday, Fantasy Champs.
Later.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.